Greetings, everyone. My name is Jeff Cruz, and I am the Executive Director of the Latinos for a Secure Retirement Coalition, and also a member of the board of Social Security Works, who's been a great partner in putting this event together. We are here today for the reintroduction of the SSI, Supplemental Security Income Restoration Act, which is a key program to help disabled and elderly individuals who cannot work. It includes 1 million children who have severe disabilities. And we have a great lineup here today. You are going to hear from policy experts and academics about how these provisions will reduce poverty. And you are going to hear from some of our elected officials in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, who are fighting for people who rely on SSI. And so we have a great lineup here today. And I'm especially pleased we are doing this here at Casa Iris, which is a low-income senior housing apartment complex. And it is sponsored by the National Hispanic Council on Aging. And so I want to introduce Dr. Yanira Cruz as our first speaker. She is the Executive Director of the National Hispanic Council on Aging and is doing amazing work ensuring seniors get the services they need and also using that knowledge to help advocate for seniors. And so I want to introduce Dr. Yanira Cruz.
Buenos dias. Thank you, Jeff, for all that you do, for your leadership, and for bringing us together this morning. And of course, I'm delighted to have the Congresswoman Adelita Grijalba with us today. Also, Tracy from Justice and Aging has just arrived, and others are coming in as the morning develops. So, today it's a very important day here at the Casa Iris facility. For those of you who are not familiar with our housing facility, we have been around for over 20 years. It's unique because we have about 15 or 16 countries represented in the housing facility, which is very nice, from Peru, from El Salvador, Colombia, etc. So it's a very nice and diverse housing facility. It's primarily women, although we do have some couples, and most of our residents here at Casa Iris actually receive SSI, and SSI becomes a very important program for all of us. So I'm so happy that we're talking about this program today. And, we recognize that when SSI was created over 50 years ago, it had a clear and powerful mission, which was to ensure that older adults and people with disabilities living in poverty could meet their most basic needs. It was an important achievement at the time for our nation and continues to be, but today the program has not kept pace with reality and the cost of living that we all experience today. And we know that research has shown that modernizing SSI through the SSI Restoration Act could reduce poverty, and this is the reason why we're so excited and gather here today to make this announcement that you will hear more of throughout the morning. And we believe that through this Restoration Act, we could reduce poverty among recipients by about 60%, which is a significant percentage, and it could be transformational for many of our community members, many of our families. So, here at the National Hispanic Council on Aging, we're actually headquartered here. Our offices are at the end of this hallway, and so here we believe that dignity in aging is non-negotiable. Economic security is not a privilege. It is a right earned through a lifetime of work, caregiving, and contribution. And so I'll say just a few words in español for all of us to understand. El programa de SSI, como todos lo conocemos, fue creado hace más de 50 años para ayudar a adultos mayores y personas con discapacidades que viven en pobreza extrema. Sin embargo, sus reglas y beneficios no se han actualizado adecuadamente. Hoy, millones de personas dependen de este programa, pero los beneficios siguen siendo demasiado bajos y las reglas penalizan el apoyo familiar, penalizan el matrimonio. Para muchos adultos mayores latinos, el SSI representa la diferencia entre tener vivienda estable o enfrentar la pobreza extrema. Entonces, modernizar este programa, como propone el SSI Restoration Act, podría reducir la pobreza por aproximadamente 60%, y ese es sería un cambio fenomenal y de mucho beneficio. Entonces, como lo sabemos, aquí en la organización, en el Consejo Nacional Hispano para el Adulto Mayor, estamos comprometidos en mejorar la calidad de vida del adulto mayor. Creemos que envejecer con dignidad es un derecho de todos y que la seguridad económica es fundamental para lograrlo. Bueno, at the end of the day, well, this conversation is about people, right? And how programs and policies impact the daily living of people. And so today, we would like to hear directly from someone who benefits from SSI, who lives here at Casa Iris, who is part of us. Mr. Enrique Covarrubias lives here at Casa Iris, and he will be sharing a story. Interesting fact, Señor Enrique used to work for like 30 years at a restaurant, at a very prestigious restaurant here in D.C., and he served dignitaries like Jacqueline Kennedy. And so he will tell us a little more about that and his stories. Señor Enrique, por favor.
Buenos días. Buenos días y muchas gracias, doctora Cruz, por su liderazgo y compromiso. Buenos días y muchas gracias, doctora Cruz, por su liderazgo y compromiso. Reciban una calurosa bienvenida, estimados honorables congresistas, a todos los presentes en este importante evento y a los amigos residentes en Casa Iris. Mi nombre es Enrique Covarrubias, tengo 84 años y desde hace 53 años resido en los Estados Unidos. Trabajé como mesero por 30 años en un restaurante en Washington, D.C., atendiendo figuras públicas como Jacqueline Kennedy. Particularmente llevo 20 años residiendo en este edificio, Casa Iris, en Washington, D.C. En lo personal, sin la seguridad del ingreso suplementario conocida por sus siglas SSI, me encontraría en muchas dificultades económicas, especialmente considerando la vida sencilla que uno lleva después de la jubilación. Por ejemplo, me jubilé a los 62 años y recibo solamente el 85% de la jubilación regular. Gracias a esta ayuda puedo vivir con más tranquilidad y seguridad. Esta asistencia también mejora mi bienestar nutricional y me permite cubrir necesidades que puedan surgir en el día a día. En vista de los cambios recientes del gobierno, como la reducción del monto de la tarjeta de alimentos conocido como SNAP, el SSI me facilita adquirir alimentos saludables esenciales, lo cual es primordial para mi salud. Antes de concluir, quiero expresar en nombre de todos los adultos mayores aquí presentes y muy especialmente el mío, nuestro agradecimiento a los honorables congresistas y a todas las personas que abogan por el bienestar de los adultos mayores. Particularmente gracias a NACOA y la doctora Jeff Cruz, Les pedimos que sigan velando por nosotros, garantizando que podamos seguir disfrutando de una vida digna aquí en los Estados Unidos. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Enrique. We have the English translation for those that don't speak Spanish here in the room, and we will have that up online shortly as well for those joining us at home. That is just one story of someone who relies on SSI. Remember, there are 7 million people, 30% who are still in poverty, each with their own individual and unique story. And so we really need to modernize SSI. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker. She represents Tucson and South Arizona. She was the congresswoman who waited the longest in the history of the U.S. between being elected and certified and sworn in. And already, it seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only 5 months. But she has already made such a difference on key votes and decisions, and we know she is going to continue to fight for the people. And so it is my great honor to introduce Representative Adelita Grijalva.
Thank you. Hola, buenos días. Buenos días, good morning. Thank you for having us here to speak to you today on a topic that is vital for many seniors facing affordability issues across the country. Gracias por invitarnos hoy para hablar sobre el tema muy importante para nuestras comunidades que enfrentan dificultades económicas en todo el país. Today I'm joining my fellow members of Congress and advocates including Justice and Aging, Latinos for Secure Retirement, the National Hispanic Council on Aging, as well as the Roosevelt Institute to talk about the importance of Supplemental Security Income, SSI, the SSI program. Estamos aquí a hablar sobre la importancia del programa de seguridad de ingreso suplementario SSI. SSI was created to cover the most basic needs of elderly, blind, or individuals with disabilities in extreme poverty. It's truly a provider of last resort. SSI fue creído para cubrir las necesidades más básicas de personas mayores, ciegas o con discapacidades que viven en una situación de pobreza extrema. Es realmente un proveedor de último recurso. Sin embargo, hoy el programa no está alcanzando este objetivo. Todos los costos siguen subiendo mientras el programa se ha mantenido prácticamente congelado desde el 1972. No tenemos cambios en 50 años. Seniors are struggling to afford the most basics that they need to live safely and securely. Now more than ever, SSI is a critical program to seniors across the country, more of whom are aging into poverty with limited income and assets. SSI is particularly important for older women and women of color who face systemic inequalities throughout their lives. Para las mujeres de color, como las mujeres latinas que viven en las trazas más altas de pobreza debido a factores sistémicos como la brecha en salario debido y género en raza y empleados de primera línea que francamente no pagan sueldos. Additionally, Supplemental Security Income SSI is a critical lifeline for more than 1 million children with disabilities in the United States. To qualify, families must meet severe financial restrictions threshold. A child must have a medical condition that results in marked or severe functional limitations, such as blindness, deafness, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, or muscular dystrophy. Caring for a child with high needs often requires parents to work hours or leave workforce entirely to manage medical emergencies for daily care. SSI provides a needed and stable income source that allows parents to prioritize their child's health and development. While this program is a financial lifeline for 7 million people in this country, Congress has refused to update the program. In fact, we barely even hear about it. It's time to update SSI, the Supplemental Security Income, to better serve our nation's lowest income seniors and people with disabilities. This bill will increase benefits amounts and asset limits so that having a minor savings account doesn't disqualify you from getting benefits. It will rid the punitive reductions in benefits and streamline the claiming process. Asegura que tener una pequeñita cuenta de ahorros no te descalifica para recibir ayuda. It also reduces administrative burdens for the Social Security Administration and restores a program that plays a pivotal role in the role of securing so many millions of Americans, including over 1 million children. Improving SSI is one of the most effective means of addressing senior poverty in the nation, period. Seguiremos luchando hasta que este proyecto de ley se haga realidad. We are going to keep fighting until this bill becomes a reality. Muchas gracias por su atención y su apoyo.
Thank you, Representative Grijalva, for championing this issue. Again, just to repeat what she said, the asset limit, hasn't been raised since 1989, and the income disregards not since 1972, as the cost of basically everything has, tripled and quadrupled. This program has not been updated, so it's badly in need of an update. I'm also honored to introduce our next speaker. He is the Republican representative of Guam and represents a growing support to update SSI among Republicans. Recently, some of the leading academic think tank experts on conservative-leaning institutions have come out in support of updating SSI, and we're seeing more and more members of both parties realize that it's time to update this program. So it's my honor to introduce Representative James Moylan, and I also want to point out he is a veteran who served in our Army, because it's so important people realize, and I'm Puerto Rican, people in the territories serve in this Army, they risk their lives, thousands have died fighting for this country, and many are currently risking their lives in the Middle East. And so, these are Americans who fight in the military and deserve to have the same benefits as everyone else. But you'll hear more about this from our representative from Guam, James Moylan.
Buenos dias. My name is Jim Moylan, and I come from Guam. And I'm going to talk to you about our inequalities that we have in the territories. Territories such as Puerto Rico, Guam, Mariana Islands, American Samoa as well. It's a little bit about Guam. We've been a territory of the United States since the Spanish-American War. We're the oldest territory there is, but yet we still don't have the equality of those that live in the mainland. And I'm very proud to be working closely with Congresswoman Guevara here and co-sponsoring this measure to update our Social Security system. And this means also to include the territories that have been left out. Puerto Rico, again, American Samoa, Northern Marianas, and Guam. And for decades, we've been denied access to supplemental Social Security income. And it's not because of our disability, and it's not because we're less American, but simply because of where we live. Disabled American citizens are excluded from SSI solely because they live on Guam, a U.S. territory where residents serve in uniform, pay federal taxes, and pledge allegiance to the same flag we all do. There's a case of a couple of twins, two disabled girls that were born with disability. These twins had a wake-up call for us when they were trying to come back home. They are Guam residents and wanted to return home. But their story is very painful, that the two children with the same disabilities, same medical needs, and the same financial hardships are treated differently under federal law depending on their zip code. Saipan is just 20 minutes away by air from Guam. One of the sisters lived in Saipan. The other sister wanted to live back home on Guam. But Guam doesn't have SSI. Saipan does. So they weren't able to come together. It's so unfortunate. And this case made it clear what families on Guam have known for years that our people are being left behind. This is a deeply personal issue for me, and I regularly hear from my constituents about this SSI problem. And parents are caring for their children with several severe disabilities, veterans with life-altering conditions, individuals who are unable to work and who depend on family members just to get by. This is a reality many families on Guam know all too well. It is the mother wondering how she will continue caring for her child when resources run out. It is a family doing everything they can to support their loved ones, while knowing that a program meant to help Americans in these very circumstances is out of reach. These families deserve dignity. They deserve fairness, and they deserve to know their government sees them. I carry their stories with me every day, and those stories are why I fight. There are also many Guamanians living in the mainland, the United States today, who receive SSI and want nothing more than to return home, but can't afford to do that because there's no SSI on Guam. Because of that, they must stay in the mainland. So they are forced to make an impossible choice: remain 1,000 miles away from their families and return home and lose their assistance they depend on. No American should ever have to choose between the support they need and the home they love. SSI was created to provide basic level of financial support to disabled Americans and those with limited means who cannot support themselves. That mission should not stop at a shoreline. Guam is part of the United States. Our people are American citizens. Our service members deploy at one of the highest per capita rates in the nation. Yet the system meant to support our most vulnerable Americans still leaves many in Guam on the outside looking in, forced to make ends meet without the support available to others. To my constituents back home, I hear you, and I will continue to advocate for you. To my colleagues, I urge your support in bringing a long overdue fairness to the American citizens in Guam and the rest of the territories. And it is time to end this. It is time for consistency, and it is time to correct this inequality. So I want to thank you, and I'll be fighting with my colleague here to make sure we get these SSIs updated to include those that are not qualified to receive just because of where they live. Thank you very much.
And the congressman really makes a key point of this geographic quirk. I'm Puerto Rican, and a lot of our families go back and forth. And so if you live in Puerto Rico and you move 100 miles to Florida, you could get SSI. But, if something happens and you want to move back to Puerto Rico, you can't get it if you, move back on the island, which is pretty crazy and needs to be changed. We are going to hear from policy experts who are going to go more into the details of provisions in a minute. But I know our Congress officials have a very busy schedule. A lot's going on right now, but they have graciously agreed to stay for a few minutes if people have questions. And so, again, we're going to have experts go into the technical details of the bill, but if folks have a question or two, now they've agreed to take one or two before they have to head back. Do we have any questions in the room or online? Yeah. Yep, okay. And actually, why don't we get all the speakers and we'll just do a quick picture. Yep. And in another, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. And so you've heard from our champions in the House, but of course we have two chambers in Congress. And we have Senator Elizabeth Warren, who needs no introduction, who is leading the effort in the Senate. One thing about Elizabeth Warren that a lot of people don't know is that before she became a household name, she did a lot of research and wrote about the rising bankruptcy and poverty among seniors. And so there is no one that knows this subject better than Elizabeth Warren. And unfortunately, she couldn't join us today live, but we have a video of her that we will watch now. Thank you.
Everyone, it is great to join you virtually today as we keep up the fight to pass the Supplemental Security Income Restoration Act. I just want to start by saying SSI is not charity. It is a critical lifeline for millions of Americans with disabilities, but the program hasn't been updated in more than 5 decades. It's leaving Americans behind with its outdated benefit levels and rules that punish people for working or trying to responsibly save money. As it stands, the SSI system can end up trapping people in poverty and punishing them for trying to get ahead. And that is exactly why we need the SSI Restoration Act to increase cash payments and fix rules that penalize Americans for getting married, for accepting help from a family member, or for saving more than just a few pennies. The bill also expands who's eligible because it is long overdue for people from Guam and Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and American Samoa to get SSI benefits as well. So now, more than ever, we need to bolster SSI. Donald Trump is driving up the cost of everything. Housing is up, groceries are up, health insurance is up, and we need to be doing everything that we can to make sure that people with disabilities can make it in this economy. And that effort starts with passing the SSI Restoration Act. And you can bet I'm going to fight tooth and nail to get it done. But here's the deal. You can help too. Call your member of Congress. Share your story about how this bill would change your life. Person by person, family by family, neighbor by neighbor. That is how we will build the power to turn these important fixes into law. I'm with you all the way in that fight because I believe that together we're going to get this done.
And for DC folks, Eleanor Holmes Norton is a co-sponsor, and unfortunately we don't have senators in DC. That's another issue for another day. But I just want to echo how important it is for people listening in that they become active, that they join organizations like Social Security Works and Justice and Aging and others, National Hispanic Council on Aging, those who are fighting on this. It's not going to be easy, but I've been in D.C. a while. I fought, to fix our multi-employer pension system, to repeal WEP and GPO. A lot of people didn't think we could ever do it. They would say it costs too much, it's impossible. But we ignored them, we organized, and we continued to reach out to members and advocate. And multi-employer pensions was one of the first things signed into law by Biden when he came into office. And the repeal of the WEP GPO was one of the last things he signed into law before he left office. We were successful in both because we organized and we advocated. And so it's very important we do this. We are going to win on this issue. Next, I would like to introduce from Justice and Aging, who is one of the key groups advocating for this. And so we have Tracy Groninger, who's going to come and talk a little bit more.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Groniger with Justice in Aging, and at Justice in Aging, we work with advocates and legal aid organizations across the country who serve low-income older adults. These are people who have worked their whole lives, raised families, cared for spouses, survived illness, and now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, they are trying to live on SSI. For many of them, SSI is not a supplement. It is their entire income. And right now, that total income is less than $1,000 a month. Try paying rent, utilities, for food, medication, and transportation on less than $1,000 a month in 2026. The advocates we work with regularly hear from older adults who are skipping meals to afford prescriptions, or who are afraid to receive gifts from family because they could lose benefits, who have been forced to stay in unsafe and inadequate housing situations because they can't afford anything else. And the cruel irony is that the SSI program was designed to prevent poverty among older adults and people with disabilities. But today, the benefit level and outdated program rules are keeping people in poverty instead. This is not a reflection of the values that we hold as a society. It's the result of neglect and inaction. The SSI Restoration Act addresses some of these important issues to move towards bringing the program back to what it was meant to be. It updates asset limits that have been frozen since 1989 so that older adults are no longer punished for having more than $2,000 in savings or having some money in a retirement account. $2,000 is not a nest egg. That's often just one emergency. It also increases the benefit level so that SSI actually functions as a poverty prevention program. Seniors who are receiving some money from Social Security retirement benefits will be able to keep a little more of that as part of their monthly income. The Act modernizes rules that penalize family support, rules that disproportionately harm older women, older adults of color, and people who rely on intergenerational households to survive. For older adults, this bill is not abstract. It means the ability to afford groceries without choosing between food and medicine. It means being able to keep a modest cushion in the bank. It means dignity. And this is not a red state or a blue state issue. Seniors and people with disabilities all over the country are feeling the effects of this neglect. And that's exactly why support for programs like SSI is growing. The SSI Restoration Act is long overdue, and the need is undeniable. The American people are ready, and we just need the political will to match. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, it's hard to believe, but 30% of SSI households receiving the benefit currently live in poverty. That's almost 1/3. So we definitely need to update this program, as Tracy highlighted. Our next speaker, unfortunately, had a health issue and couldn't make it. But we have Stefan Nunez, who has researched the SSI Restoration Act. They spent 18 months doing analyses that are way above my head. I couldn't explain it. But he's going to talk a little bit more about how these provisions will reduce poverty. And so we have him on a video, and let's play it.
Hi, my name is Stephen Nunez, and I am the Director of Stratification Economics at the Roosevelt Institute. And I will be sharing the results of some research that my colleague Jack Landry and I worked on over the last 18 months, estimating the cost and impacts of the SSI Restoration Act of 2024, which is the precursor to this 2026 bill. So Jack and I did what's called a microsimulation analysis. We used the current population survey's annual social and economic supplement to first estimate conditions for SSI recipient households, including their poverty rate, and then to simulate how those conditions would change under the SSI Restoration Act of 2024. We're also paying special attention to households that would become newly eligible for SSI under this bill. We then estimated the annual cost of the SSI Restoration Act of 2024. So on this screen here, you can see our top line finding, which is our impact on poverty. We used the supplemental poverty measure and found that currently SSI households have a poverty rate of about 29.2%. But if the SSI Restoration Act of 2024 were passed, that would drop down about 60% to 11.8%. That is roughly in line with the overall poverty rate for households in the United States right now. We also wanted to look at poverty by individual component in the bill. So we asked the question, what would happen to the poverty rate if we took just one of these provisions in the bill in isolation and we implemented them independently? And we looked at three major features: the in-kind support and maintenance provision removal, the increase to the earned and unearned income disregard, and the increase to the overall benefit level. And we found that of these three provisions, the increase to the overall benefit level was most impactful, at least in terms of poverty. Simply implementing that on its own would decrease the poverty rate to 16.9%, which is about 70% of the impact of the overall bill. You might ask how much this would cost, and we looked at the full SSI Restoration Act and each of these individual components. And we found, similar to the Social Security Administration's own analysis of an earlier version of the bill, that the SSI Restoration Act would cost roughly $61 billion per year to implement. That would almost double SSI expenditure each year, whereas in contrast, the benefit increase only would cost about $34 billion, and the disregard and in-kind support and maintenance removal provisions would cost considerably less. These two later provisions don't decrease poverty as much as the benefit increase, but they have important impacts on administrative burden and reducing benefits churn amongst beneficiaries. I don't have a lot of time, so I just want to say that the full report is available now at the Roosevelt Institute webpage, and I encourage you all to look at it if you're interested. It includes a history of the SSI program and how we got to this point. It includes a discussion of each of the components of the SSI Restoration Act of 2024, what they do and why they're included. It includes an analysis of the impacts broken down by region and by demographic characteristics like marital status, race and ethnicity, and age. And finally, it also includes a discussion of some other aspects of SSI that are not treated by the SSI Restoration Act, and what legislators might consider to further modernize and reform the program. So thank you very much for your time, and once again, thank you for having me here.
So Steve talked about percentages, but what this means is that 1 million, more than 1 million Americans would be lifted out of poverty with this bill. And their analysis didn't include the expansion to Puerto Rico, Guam, and the territories. So, it's probably significantly higher than 1 million Americans. I also want to talk about the cost because it seems very expensive. I worked on the Senate Budget Committee for 6+ years. I want to be clear. Congress just passed a law less than a year ago to give ICE $75 billion to terrorize our communities. And if you look at the reconciliation bill they just passed a few months ago, there are dozens of tax provisions that easily raise more money to pay for the expansion of SSI. And so we could afford it. Budgets are moral documents. If we prioritize helping the most vulnerable, we could easily afford it. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Now, it is my honor. I'm Puerto Rican. And we have a guest here who is in the Puerto Rican House of Representatives and chairs the Judiciary Committee there. And so I want to welcome Jose Perez Cordero to say a few words.
Good morning, buenos días. Para mí es un gran placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. Good morning to everyone. I just want to thank the organizers of this activity, for the members of the Congress for the commitment and for the compromise with the people like you that suffer the iniquity and that need more to improve their lives. For me, as a representative of 3.2 million people of the territory that represent that we have more population than 21 states on the mainland, it's really hard to speak about this because we have been discriminated, not only in the matters of SSI, because our discrimination is not only because it's because we live in our territory, it's a geographical discrimination, even when we fight in the same wars, and we have been contributing since the very beginning of this great nation. Like I said, and like the people before me said, this is an issue about dignity and the moral responsibility that we share as a nation to protect those who are most vulnerable. As a representative, I want to speak plainly about the reality that we face as American citizens in the territories. Puerto Rico poverty rates are approximately 43%, more than 3 times that the rates in the mainland of the U.S. Nearly 1 of 5 on the island that live on the island are over age 65. And more than 1,000 of seniors and individuals with disabilities are living in extremely limited incomes. These are not statistics. These are American citizens. These are our seniors, veterans, our neighbors, and our families. Yet, despite the realities, as American citizens living in Puerto Rico are completely excluded from the Supplemental Security Income program. Instead, seniors and people with disabilities on the island must rely on a much smaller block grant. Block grant that we have faced the same issue with the Medicare, Medicaid, the enormous challenge that we are facing and the strong barrier that we are given on the Congress to be included on the SNAP program. In the practice, that means that 2 American citizens with the same disability, in the same need, and at the same level of poverty are treated differently, simply because they live in Puerto Rico or a territory. That is not fairness. SSI is not only a social safety net. It is a stability for families who are struggling to survive. These benefits help people pay for food, medication, rent, and their basic necessities. Expanding SSI to Puerto Rico will not only provide dignity to the vulnerable Americans even on the island, it will strengthen families and communities across the whole islands of Puerto Rico. Let me be clear. This is not about special treatment. This is about an equal treatment for U.S. citizens. No American senior, no American veteran, no American with disability should receive less support simply because they live on a territory like Puerto Rico. Equally, should not stop at the shoreline. We are U.S. Modernizing SSI and extending Puerto Rico and the territory is not just overdue. It is a matter of fairness, dignity, and economic justice. So Congress has the authority to correct this inequity. And Congress must act now, and this is the moment. So on behalf of the people of Puerto Rico, yo le exijo y le agradezco de igual forma a los congresistas que de forma bipartita presentaron esta legislación para hacerle justicia no solamente a los ciudadanos americanos que viven dentro del continente, sino for those like me, like my father, like my grandfather, who live on territories like Puerto Rico. This is the moment, and we're going to be supporting all those congresswomen and congressmen, like Congresswoman Grijalva, the representative from Guam, who face the same issues that we have. But let me be clear, we are 3.2 million people that are discriminated just because of geographical situation. And it is enough. We have been contributing since the very beginning of this nation, since the revolution, with blood, sweat, and the capacity of our people, nuestra gente hispana, que hacen grande esta nación. Así que muchas gracias a todos ustedes, un gran placer, que Dios los bendiga, y yo sé que vamos a lograr esto, y va a haber equidad y justicia para todos. Thank you.
And I think the representative made a great point, that it doesn't just impact the individual who gets SSI. This impacts entire communities. These are people living under poverty or just barely above poverty. So they use this income to buy food, to fix a leaky roof. They're not squirreling it away. I mean, there's an asset limit that prevents them from doing so. So this money immediately gets spent and boosts the local economy, at the local shop where they buy food, et cetera. And so one of the reasons the poverty rate in general in Puerto Rico and Guam is higher is because they don't have people getting the SSI benefits and spending that money in the community. And that benefits communities in America, but it's the evidence is overwhelmingly clear when you look at communities that don't get it at all. And so, again, it helps not just the individuals, it helps everyone in the community, this bill will. That is the end of our program. I don't know if folks have any questions for anyone. Do you guys want to come back up? Or if we don't have questions, we could just end the program. And thanks everyone tuning in from home. And thank you guys all again for joining us for this important bill. Together, if we organize and advocate, we're going to get this passed. Thank you.
Yeah.